Welcome to Ways to Love Your Money. I'm Elisabeth Dawson, and I have a fantastic guest here today, and I think you're going to enjoy her just as much as I have already had the time to talk with her. So she's been on the NFL Network, and she is just an incredible person when it comes to sports and her story. I can't wait for her to tell you about it. But she's also interested in the world of investing in real estate, which is a wonderful thing. And I think a lot of our viewers out there love real estate. We've worked with a lot of you out there that just have questions, and they need answers, and we want to make it as much of a love affair as we can, but at the same time we want to make us very sane and not go insane over the whole prospect of being real estate owners. So without further ado, we're going to invite Erin Coscarelli here to the show. And again, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Yes.
Thank you for having me. I think I'm more excited to talk to you than the other way around. But anyways, yeah.
Well, good. I'm glad that you're here. So you can tell me compliments like that all day long if you like.
You got it.
So tell me a little bit about your story. Tell me a little bit about kind of your background, things that you've done, what you're, where you're kind of coming to at this point, and.
Well, I just recently got married about a year ago. We were just talking off camera about our honeymoon adventures. But before all of that, I was always interested in sports, hence why obviously I got into sports broadcasting, and I always had a love for people. And it really doesn't even matter if you were an athlete. I just always loved hearing people's stories and the adversities that they would go through and various things and challenges in some way, somehow sort of feeling like I could relate to somebody and like where's my ability to connect with them. So I always loved the sports background of, especially as someone who was an athlete growing up, and then went to USC, studied broadcast journalism, and then hired at a younger age to cover the World Series of Poker, which was in Vegas. It was my first job out of college. Oh, wow. And it was a wild ride, and it confirmed that this is the business that I really enjoyed, because it allowed an opportunity to meet really smart, fun, cool, different, unique, interesting individuals. And I've been doing the sports broadcasting thing for the last 10, 15 years now.
That's
so
great.
yeah,
That's great.
Very enjoyable and very fulfilling. It has its moments, but any job does. So yeah.
Well, talking about the NFL or sports in general, I mean, this has been a very male-dominated industry, kind of like where I come from, right? So how have you felt going through that process and kind of making your own name?
It's getting better, right? In the beginning, you sort of feel like you have a chip on your shoulder, and I think sometimes I still struggle with that, where I'm like, are you treating me like a woman who covers sports, or are you treating me like just anybody who has a passion for sports?
Right.
And a respect. And because I didn't put the pads on, I didn't play football, I wasn't a professional football player, sometimes I think, and I think it's a little bit of my own mind as well, that I'm perceived differently. But with that being said, I've been given a great opportunity, and part of being, involved in an atmosphere that is more male dominated, you have to show up a little bit more over prepared than you would your male counterparts. And if anything, that just drives me, I embrace the challenge, and it just drives me to succeed even further, knowing that, yeah, sure, I'm a woman in a male dominated field, or a more of a male dominated field, and I'll embrace the challenge and accept the challenge and enjoy the ride, because it's a fun job and it has its ups and downs, but being able to meet cool and interesting people and learn from them, it's just, to me, it makes the job worth every ounce of stress or frustration I get from it.
Has there been a favorite interview that you've had over the years that you can kind of like call back to and say, hey?
My mom's a huge Joe Namath fan, so I don't know if we're Joe Namath fans in here, but he's just wildly charming, hasn't changed at all in his age, and to me, the bigger thing is almost coming home to my parents and telling them, hey, I met, and then my parents thinking maybe it's kind of cool, or maybe sometimes they don't even care, but I still embrace the fact that I try to make my parents proud every single day.
Now, what are the next ventures for you? What are you trying to accomplish now? I know you have another podcast and things of that nature as well. So.
Yeah, I'm kind of dipping my toes in the podcast world, which is fun, and again allows you to have the freedom to meet people and hear their stories and kind of learn about different things. I love the podcast space, and I love actually what you're doing too, because I think we can all figure out ways to change the game in various degrees of finances or self motivation or just personal development. But yeah, so I've been doing the podcast thing, and then obviously, as we were talking about it off camera, some real estate endeavors, which has been fairly fun. We just bought a fixer, and then we're renovating it. So I'm really putting on my Joanna Gaines hat, and my husband's wearing his Chip Gaines hat, and we're just trying to, renovate a house. It's fun, but has its moments too.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your real estate investing that you have such a passion for, and I think this is kind of a little bit to do with your husband.
Totally. I have to give him credit as much as I like to try to take it from him. It was really his idea that when we first met, I had just come from San Francisco. I met him about a month from moving down. I used to cover the Niners up in the Bay Area. Okay. If we know what San Francisco real estate is like, it's expensive. And my rent was more than my mortgage on my house that I ended up purchasing down the road later. And I just remember thinking, gosh, I don't want to spend a single penny in rent again. So when I met my husband, he really planted the seed in like, hey, look, you make a decent salary at your job, save that money, don't live in your like nice apartment condo that you wanted to live right by the Beverly Center. Why don't you live with your parents for a year? I think I was 30. Okay. And I'm like, really? The idea of moving back home with my parents? You're nuts, not happening. And I just don't know why I didn't even think about that in the first place, because my parents are local in LA. My new job was local in Los Angeles. But anyway, so he planted that seed. I moved in with them, lived with them for about a year, saved up a sizable chunk, and really put that into the down payment of a income property. I bought a duplex, and then I made an interesting decision, again, pushed by my now husband, to live in the smaller unit. Okay. So it was a 2-unit duplex. There was a more master, which was a 3-2, and then a 1-1. Sure. And I'm like, all right, even though I'm considered the owner, in my head I'm thinking I'm the owner, I should live in the master unit. I chose to live in the back, again, pushed by my husband. So then what happened was my tenant who lived in the master unit paid my mortgage for me. So again, it was like living with my parents, where I was saving and living for free, and having somebody different mentality, needed to sacrifice. It certainly wasn't glamorous. It was a tiny little back house. It was 1 bedroom, 1 bath. And did that for about a year and a half, and got obviously it was not big enough for me, and my husband was living with me at the time too. So we were like, okay, let's buy another place. And so I
can stop you for a second, because I kind of want to go back to what's all the rage right now. For people that own their home, it's about doing something called an ADU. Yeah. And these ADUs are where the people are actually, in the smaller little granny flat, if you will, and then they're renting out their big house to be able to pay for everything.
Oh, I didn't even think of that.
And it's pretty much a big craze, especially it's happening in Southern California. I guess there's been certain laws and things of that nature that have come to be available for people to do this, but they had a big lot. They're going to build a smaller one in the back to make it cute, but they're going to rent out the main one, and they're going to positive cash flow to increase their rent, their income in retirement.
Bingo.
So smart. It's kind of like what you were doing. So your husband was ahead of the game.
Yeah, and it was really, that was kind of what I was looking for. I was envisioning living in the bigger unit, but he was like, why? You were living with your parents. You didn't even have a place to live. Just sacrifice for a year or 2 years. And so that's what I did, and I saved up again, rolled it over into a new investment property that had 2 units. I lived they were virtually the same, so I lived on the higher floor. And again, 0 payments. I was making enough money where I had no more, I didn't have any, what is it called when you have to pay your mortgage? I'm sure you have a way cooler way to say it.
Payment, and then basically what you're getting is positive cash flow so that you don't have to pay your mortgage.
Right. There you go. Okay. And so I did that again for another 2 years or a year and a half or so, and then rolled that. It was because again, I had an ability to save via all my tenants that were paying my mortgage for me, basically, and then just bought another single family. So this is a single family. This is a home renovation. We're doing a 10-year interest only, so we want to keep as much capital as possible. Put it in the home, and then when the market goes back up again, maybe sell or refinance. Yeah.
So do you both own a home that you live in together?
So this third property was...
It's going to be that?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So you're kind of doing a joint venture.
Joint venture. Again, he was the inspiration first two, but he was not involved investment wise. Okay. And then we're doing the single family joint venture, and it's been fine. I get stressed and anxiety ridden about just any process that's different from what I'm normally doing. But it's been pretty okay.
Well, it can be distracting, but at the other time, if it depends on your relationship with money, that's really what the focus of this show is, ways to love your money. It's a respect for money, but again, you have a spouse now.
Yeah.
Do you see eye to eye on your finances?
We totally do, which is amazing because I think I'm more thrifty than my husband, and he is really thrifty. And I don't mean thrifty by we just really embrace the word save. We really do, and like there's ways in which I splurge. I remember I watched a Susie Orman interview. She was on Oprah a long time ago, and it really resonated with me, and I was young. I must have been like 16. And she said, there are two categories, want and need. And unless you need it, you don't need to make the purchase. And it's true, and it's still to this day, I'll splurge, I'll buy a pair of shoes, or I have a nice car. But really when it comes to like day-to-day things, I figure out ways to save because I don't need to live an excessive lifestyle. I'd rather figure out ways to strategically maximize the money that I make or my passive income, and then breathe a little bit easier when I'm older. Because right now is the time I feel like I should be sacrificing, making those smart decisions in my portfolio, whether it's diversifying it in the portfolio, in the stocks, which we have a certain amount in the world of stocks, or buying another property, or just figuring out ways to strategically up my game in the world of finance. Yeah.
Well, I think it kind of comes to another place too. It's, you have to have professional help in everything that you choose to do. Now you're becoming both experts in your real estate and you're loving it, but then it's going to the tax professional to say, what are we doing to maximize things? Going to your financial advisor. I know you're not I'm not your financial advisor, but getting that great education to make sure that you are well-rounded. But then it's looking at every financial decision. So sometimes when I talk to couples, they sometimes have a different point of view. So it's great to hear that you and your husband have a very similar point of view and that you're very frugal because you came from, an environment really in your media world where it's very excessive,
the opposite,
very exploitive, and now you're kind of in this place where it's fairly conservative.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting because usually when I have people that are coming from those types of areas, it's not so conservative.
Sure. And that was what actually, it's funny that you say that because I was really motivated by how expensive San Francisco was. Sure. I was paying rent on my car. Like my extremely expensive one-bedroom apartment didn't even allow me to park my car there for free. I had to pay an extra $200. Mind you, I had a really expensive car because I had this lease for 3 years. I found out I was getting this job. I had to move. I just so happened, that's my one splurge. I like a nice vehicle. I mean, I live in LA. That's my, whatever. So I had a car. I never drove it. And I had to pay the rent. I had to pay the insurance. And I had to pay the payment on the car. So it was just sitting there collecting dust. And it bothered me so much to waste some hardworking, opportunity that I did. So that really inspired me. When I came back, I'm like, you know what? I'm not letting myself get myself into that situation again.
That's something what we call a lost opportunity cost.
There you
Because
go.
you put that money into something else that would have actually had a higher return.
Yes.
And how many years do people do this? It's really a rotation. They buy their cars year after year, buy another car year after year after year, and they basically put in their budget that they're going to have a $400 to $600 to $700 payment every month, every year, and maybe they're not using their car. San Francisco is a completely different animal than San Diego, and it's a different animal even than Los Angeles. But San Francisco, we have clients up there too that we talk to, and it's very interesting. They pretty much just take an Uber now.
Yes, and even still in LA, you could do that. Yeah.
Even if you were in New York, you don't necessarily need a car. You can just take Uber everywhere.
Right, or you have one family vehicle. Not that I'm recommending that, but yes, if you don't really use your car all the time, and it might make sense to figure out ways to keep your cost low and save.
So what would you want to tell people that are listening right now or watching the show about your dreams, desires about real estate? What would you want to say about that?
It's so funny because this is what I want to say. In fact, actually, I always give my girlfriends this advice that work so when I was younger, I made pretty decent money right out of college. I worked in nightlife, and I was like a waitress, and we made a lot of cash. And I remember I again just spent it on a nice car, didn't save, had a really nice apartment, and just lived this life of lavish without thinking about the future.
Right.
And to this day, I feel like I could have made so much money right out of college, lived with my parents. Even though it wasn't really like a career job, I was doing okay. Could have just bought a house when I was that young, as opposed to waiting till I was in my 30s to purchase a house. But again, wasted opportunity that if I could give young women who are making decent money what I never thought that I could do, which is I never thought I could buy property. Sure. And I think it sounds very daunting. It can be intimidating. And you just don't know if you're capable of doing it until you really decide to stop procrastinating and just decide I'm gonna make this happen. Sure. And if I could do it, you guys could do it. Let me tell you something. And if you're afraid of that, buy a duplex. That's what I did. If you're afraid, okay, I don't know if I'm gonna for sure have the income to support a 30-year fixed, loan that I need to make a payment on every month, then buy a duplex where you can shore up that risk. Sure. And that was what worked for me. And now it's just kind of an ever-evolving system for me, where every year or every other year I buy a property and I forget about it, and it's great passive income.
Well, I think it's a wonderful opportunity because when you do multi-units, you get double the rent. Right. And you're going to get more than just a single family residence. So people that I've coached along the way, it's 2, 3, 4. Can't go to 5 because then it becomes commercial. Yeah. So I own commercial real estate, so I understand these things, but it's a completely different way of financing, right? It's a completely different way of financing. Got to put a lot more money into those commercial properties than you can with a 2-unit, a 3-unit, or a 4-unit. But boy, can you get double, triple, quadruple the rents, and it's a beautiful place to be.
Yeah, commercial real estate is like my goal. That would be my dream. That's my dream, commercial real estate. But one day.
One day at a time. But you're doing more things than most people probably your age at this point. So I know you asked me this one question. When was the first? How old was I when I bought my first piece of real estate? I answered the question. I can tell everybody right now. I was at 23 years of age, and you kind of asked me that question because your husband bought his first...
Oh, yeah, he was 21. Okay. Yeah, he was 21. He bought a triplex. He lived in the basement, rented out the first 2, did exactly kind of what I did. He's the reason, he taught me sort of this little success, success story. And you can do it at a young age. It's not that scary.
We just have to have money in the bank. We have to have finances to support the loan. We've got to be able to make sure we can make all those things happen. Yeah. But again, I'm glad that you're sharing your story. I think it's fascinating because I think other people, they want to know what's the next best thing for them to do, but also do it with a managing situation so it's paying for you too, so that you don't have to come out of pocket for things, which is really the American dream when it comes to real estate ownership. So anything you want to share about your future show that you're doing here, all those different things, just to kind of close up today?
You guys can follow me on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. There's going to be a show we're launching coming out soon. So go check out my Twitter or my Instagram at Erin Coscarelli, and we'll be releasing some information about some stuff that's coming up.
Good. Yeah. Well, we want to say thank you so much for being here on the show. Hope you'll come back again one day. And again, one thing I wanted to give perspective to, which I think is so important, because if we want to buy real estate, we need to get focused about it, right? We don't want to have all of our eggs in one basket. We want to have multiple baskets, but at the same time, we need to be financially sound. We need to make sure that we have great cash flow. We've got to have great income to do the things that we want to do so we can qualify. But ultimately, if that real estate starts to actually pay for itself and pay for what you have as overhead, then just think about what that mortgage payment would have been that you would have been paying for yourself, or those car payments that Erin talked about. But one thing I want you to kind of rewind back in time. I encourage every single person to go to Social Security and go to ssa.gov. And the reason I say this is because when you were young and when you just got started, wouldn't it be amazing when you're in your 30s or your 40s or your 50s if you had any money from when you first got started with that income? I had a big epiphany of that many, many years ago when I looked at my Social Security statement. I go, where's all the money? Well, if we have good financial education, we might be able to save some of that money throughout our lifetime and be able to, expand, be entrepreneurs, be able to invest in real estate or business or whatever our goals, dreams, and desires might have. Maybe it's that apartment building. I don't know. Maybe it's just business that you want to be in. But think about those things because you got to kind of look at the history of your income, see where it goes, but ask yourself that question. Where's all that money? Did it just go to lifestyle, or did it go to those best investments that you wanted it to go to? Or did you want it to go to a balanced situation? So I encourage you to go to ssa.gov. Again, thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned for next week. There'll be another show here with another great interview. And again, let us know and give us any feedback about ways to love your money and what you'd like to hear on the show. The information provided in this show is for informational and educational purposes only. This show is not investment advice, nor is it intended to address the financial needs of any particular viewer. The opinions expressed on this show are not intended to be an endorsement of any particular investment strategy or service of any other kind. You must make an independent decision regarding investments or strategies mentioned throughout the show. Before acting on information in this show, you should consider whether it is suitable for your particular situation and strongly consider seeking advice from a financial advisor.